Today, we're printing posters. Super tight registration with paper is 100% a pain in the tush, because this is the first time I've done something this tight for registration on paper. It's the first time I've done CMYK. I'm using 230 mesh instead of 305 mesh, so I've got a whole bevy of variables that I'm like, all right, before I get on press and show this live on film, I need to make sure it at least looks good. So as you can see, I took away a lot of information from this. Number one, saturation. 230 mesh was definitely on the low side for the color density out of the CMYK inks. Now, of course, CMYK profiles are always set up for 305 mesh printing. So there's a limitation to how much ink goes through that mesh. Even with an 80 durometer squeegee, very hard, very sharp, you're still going to have more ink going down onto the paper just because your stencil is thicker. Again, we're only talking 15, 20 microns thicker, but that's enough to go from a pink to something that looks like magenta in the container. What's the first thing I took away from that? I need to reduce the opacity of my ink. In this case, I took the 3 CMYK inks I'm using and cut those 50% with clear core. So it's the same base, but now that color, its strength is halved. So hopefully I'm gonna get more of a pink than a hard magenta out of it. And instead of real hard black, I'll get a softer black. We'll find out. I knew the paper would shrink, but I wasn't aware of how much it really shrunk. When I did my first test, I took my black screen, printed on paper, and then I did 3 sheets. 2 I ran through the dryer to see how much they would shrink, and then 1 I printed and left out to air dry. So the 2 that ran through the dryer shrunk up by at least 1/8 of an inch. Now again, hey, heat on paper, if you've ever done plastisol transfers, you already understand the struggle. That's why you pre-shrink your paper stock. And if you are letting it evaporate, then it's just a different conversation on how that paper shrinks and grows. It's something that if I want to do this on camera, I need to take all the pages that I'm going to print, run them through the dryer first so that they pre-shrink, and then come back and line it up. Registration, because I'm on a screen printing press, is the same as any other time that I need to do registration. Just like anything, it needs to be really, really dialed in. Then I need to be really consistent when I place my paper in. I have to be dead on, which you always need to, but it's even more important. When I pull my squeegee, I have to be as much of a robot as possible in order to do this. And then ink stacking. The more you stack ink, the more that ink wants to remain a little bit sticky. It takes longer to properly evaporate and be dry to the touch. I took a really big bite when I said I wanted to try the CMYK. I'm still chewing on that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double check my registration. I printed this earlier. I want to double check that nothing's moved. As I go from color to color, there is going to be small variables involved where there's a little bit of the mesh distortion. So you can see that here. I'm just making sure that everything's going to line up, and then I need to be consistent. You can see that the black lines up really good on the edge to edge, maybe a little bit wonky, but that is a little bit of mesh deflection. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to add the magenta and I'm gonna start the print process. Much better pink development. So one thing I haven't covered is how do you prep your vacuum platen for printing on any kind of flat stock? Well, one of the first things you're going to learn the hard way is you need to make sure you cover up all of your vacuum holes in any area in which you do not have your paper. So when you're looking at this top down, there's no perforation. So you don't see any holes in the vacuum platen at all. So if I bring my screen down and I have some of those air holes showing for that vacuum to suck down, it's gonna pull my screen down with it in those areas. And then my screen's gonna be stuck, which we don't want. So we wanna cover them all up, along with our 3-point stop to make sure the paper is always in as tight a register as we can manage. we want to cover up those holes. Now you can just use your simple cardstock to cover it up. That's the most common that I see in the industry, along with tape, where you get these odd, a hole or two in a couple of places. I've also seen people take, like blue tape, masking tape, and cover them up with the tape. There's no wrong way to cover them up, as long as you can remove it when necessary without leaving much residue behind. All I'm using to clean my screen right now is water. Oh yeah, that registration is tight. I did see registration shift a little bit throughout the run. It just depends on where I was at with that color and this color, but the registration movement is really small. This is a challenge. I've discovered that I am not a fan of stochastic dots for doing stuff like this. But you know what? You never know until you try and you find out. So the next color in the design is going to be black. So I'm going to drop in my inks, pull the squeegee, look at the registration, and go for there. Go for there, go from there. So while I wouldn't call this an abject failure, because I got a lot of education out of this. I learned a lot from this. I'm definitely not happy with the print as a reproduction. I mean, it's not even a reproduction. It's something neat. It's something that's going to go on my wall as a reminder of where I've been. You know, the t-shirts that you print early on in your career and you keep to remind yourself how much better you've gotten and don't make that mistake again. There's definitely a learning experience in this. Color saturation of the inks versus what I was seeing on screen, I'd probably want to do some tests, some color block tests to see if I'm getting too much saturation. I was using 230 mesh versus 305 mesh. That 305 mesh absolutely controls that ink flow a little better. I was concerned about the ink evaporating and drying in the screen too much. I've learned, in order to control that ink deposit a little more, do a low push flood so that I get a very thin skim. I seem to get more controlled deposit that way. All sorts of little things that are compounding. My registration overall was really good. The times where I made mistakes or it looked off could have been just because of how the paper had been cut off of the roll and things shrunk in different directions. Could have been that paper was more sensitive, or I placed it on the platen wrong, or I pulled my squeegee different. But I got better and better as time went on. If you enjoyed what you see here, a like and subscribe would really brighten our day. All right, everybody, it's been fun. It's been real. Thanks, everyone.